a lot of people at Google who are from a culture here that's not very nationalist, and China is in a very nationalist place. So, yeah, I think that Google probably needs to reevaluate what it's doing. Peter and I built a very patriotic company. Google's clearly not a patriotic company.
Not a patriotic company. That's kind of dangerous and alarming language to my ear. Who's American enough? What's unpatriotic about Google?
Well, you know, Google comes from a culture that comes from an academic culture, and you talk to the deans of engineering at top schools, and they're worried about this too. There's a culture where people in the universities, they want to be open, they want to share with the whole world, and there's nationalists in China coming and taking whatever they can learn and taking it back and using it for their own nationalist purposes, where that's really not how we think about the world. It's two very different cultures that are clashing right here. And when you work with China, you have to be nationalist, you have to help the government. When you work with America, we have a country where you're allowed to push back and where people from that culture do push back. So it's a tough situation they're in.
Joe, I mean, is there evidence, is there reason to believe that, for example, foreign intelligence agencies have actually infiltrated Google?
Oh, everyone in the Valley knows that the Chinese government's very involved there. When you talk to people who are senior at Google, the reason at first they didn't want to go into China was because they knew everything would be stolen. At this point, they know everything's stolen anyway. This is not a secret. Like, we've had at all of our companies Chinese spies that are caught. It's something we don't talk about a lot, but this is just a regularly known thing in Silicon Valley. It's very clear. What Peter's saying is something that we know, but I guess is not really discussed. So I think it was very courageous of him to talk about it.
Joe, how much of this is aimed at Sundar's nationality specifically?
That's I don't think it's aimed at Sundar's nationality. Listen, I think there's two different sides of this. I think the one thing that's very important to say is that America is a great country because of immigration, because of migrants, because people want to come here. And I think there's a political correctness background, which is kind of an unthinking thing, where when people try to talk about these complex issues, you try to make it about racism and make it about horrible things. And I think all of us should agree that America is great because we're a country that welcomes everybody. There's a separate issue, though, that's also true at the same time, which is that there's a serious problem right now with the Chinese government.
Joe, let me try to understand what it is that you're saying here, because it seems like Google's not working on its search algorithm in China and exposing the crown jewels over there, from what I understand. This is AI researchers from Google who are in China, which is a hotbed of AI research. It's not clear to me exactly what intellectual property of high value is being exposed of Google's over there versus they're taking advantage of a workforce that's highly trained in AI. So what exactly do you mean about Google's intellectual property getting compromised? Which intellectual property?
Well, I mean, I think when we're talking about treason and we're talking about patriotism, I think the number one thing is that Google refused to work with the U.S. government on defense. And I think when Google made that choice, we're actively not going to help the U.S. in defense, but we are going to continue to work in China. It was very clear, because in working in China, you have to work with the government. Everything in China is the government. So if you're working in China, you're working on AI, you're doing things to help the government. The government has control of what you're doing. It's benefiting it. So Google made it very clear, we are willing to help China. We're not willing to help the U.S. And that was, I think, what Peter's reacting to. I can't speak for him. But it's a very clear distinction here. If you work in China, you do work with the government. That's how China works. They have a very competent government that runs their business world.
Joe, is the U.S. in an arms race with China or other countries, for that matter, where AI is concerned? And if we are, what's at stake here?
Well, I think overall we're in a very positive-sum situation where both sides are creating a lot of value for each other. And I'd like the world to be this harmonious place where everything is globalized and we're all global citizens in a sense. But there's also this reality that we're also a nation that has very different values than China, and it's pushing forward in the world very different values. And as much as we are a nation with our own values, it is important that we stay ahead of them in defense and ahead of them in AI. And I think the world's a better place if America is stronger. So I think there's like two sides that are both true. There's this harmonious global side and there's this nationalist side. And from a nationalist perspective, yes, there's definitely some sort of arms race on the defense side where it is important America does not fall behind.
Do you expect Peter to get more specific on this in the coming days and present, I don't know, more specifics?
I can't speak for Peter. I'm very proud that we built a company together, which is an awesome company. Palantir is probably the most patriotic company in the Valley. It's done amazing work for the U.S. government and for its allies, and it's going to continue to do that. And I think, I think in general we need more people in Silicon Valley thinking about what it means to be an American citizen as opposed to just being a global citizen.
I'm not sure doing work for the U.S. government makes you inherently patriotic, or not doing work for the U.S. government makes you not a patriot. But I wonder what the approach should be in AI for America specifically to get ahead of China. Because it seems like if China is not willing to respect civil liberties the way America is, on things like facial recognition, on things like the use of data, are they not destined to, at least in some metrics, outperform in training its AI?
Well, I think right now we're lucky. You can actually measure in academia where the very top papers are coming from. Right now, thanks to America being a country that top people want to come to, we still dominate by far the top 1%, even though China's broken into the top 20%. These things are very well documented. But you're right. There's things in China that are illegal that are not legal to do here. So even though our AI research is still well ahead of them, there's applications there that and it's true for the bio world as well. There's things they're willing to do that we're not willing to do in terms of certain morality. It's a very big question.